And it is time, because the people of Pakistan, they are tired and sick of these people, and we should give a very strong message across the border that we are the brave people, we have a great army, and integrity and the security of Pakistan and our national independence is very important for us, and there will be no any compromise on this issue.
Now, Pakistan needs to have a very pragmatic approach. We've been very reactive rather than being proactive. Don't you think, sir, this is what should be done now? That if they, I mean, why can't we, wage this hybrid warfare on the Indians? I mean,
remember about 4 months ago in September, we did a program together, and I talked about proactive diplomacy. When Imran Khan was supposed to address the United Nations General Assembly, that was around the time when we were in the program in his same studio. This is actually what we have to do, proactive diplomacy. And the dossier that the DG ISPR and the Foreign Minister showed to the world, and then the information from the EU Disinfo Lab, these are the kind of tools and the weapons that we now have. Now, you were talking about the academics and people, Pakistani diaspora. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, some of them go out. A lot of them are very, very patriotic. And I don't want to take some names, but you know all those names that I'm talking about. They badmouth against Pakistan, sitting in those coffers because they are paid and funded by India, because it's easy to talk against Pakistan and get the Indian money. Pakistan should send out the ambassadors, and these academics, these boys and girls, when they go out there, they act as ambassadors. But we must carefully choose who we send out actually. There should be a program who goes on a foreign scholarship or foreign study. They should not start bad-mouthing. They could be very, very effective. As Masood Saab was saying, and I have also studied in the US and the UK, many people did not even know about Pakistan. The positive, the soft image of Pakistan was not known to the people.
Because we haven't marketed ourselves well.
Because we haven't marketed ourselves. Luckily for us, Imran Khan himself is a very good ambassador of Pakistan. As the Prime Minister, he comes with such a charismatic personality that wherever he is going, he is drawing crowds. But he alone cannot do that. We all have to do that. The academics have to do
collective effort. Yeah?
So we all should gear up ourselves. So diplomacy should not only be left to the Foreign Office and the Pakistani embassies in different countries. We have a responsibility. Unfortunately, I'll have to mention this. Last week I was on a program with one of the guys. He was sitting in Singapore, here in the same studio. He was bad-mouthing against Pakistan. It doesn't serve the purpose for the Pakistani nation. Yes, you have to talk about facts. We're not expected here to just do buttering and sugar coating. We talk about the facts, but the fact is, when we are faced with an enemy like India, we have to show the world what India is doing to us. That is our responsibility. And that is what I think we should do as a way forward.
I think a lot needs to be done, and it has to be done on war footing actually, because we are losing time, and I think this is the time to also let them know that, this is what Pakistan is capable of. Whatever you've done so far isn't the right way, because at the end of the day, we have to live together. We are neighbors. But anyway, Jindal Saab, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much, Mr. Saab. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah, at 8. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.
Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to PTV World News. I'm Shahzad Qayyum with the top stories of this hour. Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa calls on Prime Minister Imran Khan. Matters regarding national security discussed in the meeting. Prime Minister Imran Khan constitutes a 5-member committee comprising top federal ministers to review law and order situation in the federal capital in wake of protest called by multiple groups and organizations. The Prime Minister launches Pakistan's first instant digital payment system. RAST says this new system will help to digitalize Pakistan's cash economy and commended the inclusion of poor segments of society in formal economy. DGISPL says security forces conducted successful operations against terrorism and no organized terrorist structure exists in the country. Major General Babar Iftikhar says India is involved in promoting anti-Pakistan agenda in 6 domains including abetting terrorism, targeting economy, using diplomacy, fomenting chaos, Kashmir and social issues. A 5-day national polio immunization drive underway to vaccinate over 40 million children under the age of 5 across the country. At least 8 people killed by severe snowstorm in Japan, bringing parts of the country to a standstill. National cricket team head coach misspelled her terms defeat in New Zealand as Harding says COVID protocols have badly affected players' performance. That's all for the moment. For more details and live streaming, log on to our website world.ptv.com.pk. You can find us on Facebook page with the name of PTV World and follow us on Twitter at WorldPTV. Coming up next is Politics Today with Farrukh Pitafi. Stay tuned to watch.
Sarangi is a bowed, short-necked string instrument from subcontinent, which is used in Pakistani classical music. Its flexible tunability and its ability to produce a large play of tonal color and emotional nuance makes it unique. Carved from a single block of wood, the sarangi has a box-like shape with 3 hollow chambers called stomach, chest and brain. It's usually around 2 feet long and around 6 inches wide. It has 3 melody strings and 11 to 37 sympathetically vibrating metal strings.
Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farrukh Pitafi. Once again we are going to talk about politics of Pakistan, particularly politics of antagonism between the ruling party and the opposition party's 11-member alliance, PDM. We are going to talk about it because it seems that PDM, the activism that was driving PDM at this moment has taken a back seat. But again, there were statements which were quite intriguing, particularly Maulana Fazlur Rahman, who indicated that they may take out a long march, and it may not. Instead of coming to Islamabad, may end up in Rawalpindi. And as a response to that, today we heard the DGISPR as well. The DGISPR said that Army is not involved in any political aspect, any political, activity, and regardless of that, it is very committed to the work it is doing, and in doing so, if Maulana Fazlur Rahman or others come to Rawalpindi, although there is no ground for that at all, if they do, we are going to offer refreshments. What else can we do? And this is quite interesting because it seems to actually provide a counter narrative to the PDM's statements as well. But apart from that, we have seen that the Prime Minister has been quite active in various aspects, inaugurating this scheme, that scheme, and then also interacting with media, social media, and whatnot. In that situation, it is also imperative to point out that we still are waiting for the Supreme Court's decision on presidential preference regarding holding of Senate elections. We are going to talk about all these matters and more. In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined by Ahmed Jawad Saab, who is Central Information Secretary of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the ruling party. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. With me in the studio, as an expert, we have Naseem Siddiqui Saab, a senior journalist, political analyst. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. On Skype, we are joined by Khurram Dastagir Khan Saab, senior leader of Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz. He is also a former federal minister for Foreign Affairs and Defence. Khurram Dastagir Khan Saab, thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program as well. Then we are also joined by Barrister Hasnan Ali Mirza, who is a leader of government-allied GDA. Grand Democratic Alliance. He will be joining us shortly. The moment he does, I'm going to once again welcome him. Let me start with Ahmed Jawad Saab. Ahmed Jawad Saab, at this moment, it seems that something has influenced the judgment of PDM, whether they are waiting for their deadline to expire, or whether there is some back-channel diplomacy between your party and PDM. What exactly is it?
Farrukh, I cannot comment on the backdoor diplomacy by the party, because if there is a backdoor diplomacy, then it should be a backdoor diplomacy.
Okay. Yeah, but you are the spokesman.
Then obviously it cannot be discussed. But I think what we can discuss is the intentions.
Okay.
On behalf of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, I think our intention is definitely if PDM can come on the table and can resolve the matters, and forum for that has been repeatedly identified by the Prime Minister, that is Parliament.
Okay.
So the doors of Parliament are open, and the doors of PTI government are open, and if they have some genuine issues, they can always discuss. Now let's talk about the intention of PDM.
Okay.
So what is the intention of PDM? Whether they want to negotiate with the government, because in every procession, they always make this announcement, make this information that we are not going to negotiate anything with the government.
All right.
And they say that it's not between us and the government, and it is something between us and the selectors.
Okay.
So they point towards the military establishment.
The people who rebuffed them today in public statement.
Exactly. Now I'm coming to the third stakeholder, the intention of the military establishment.
Okay.
And
Why do you call it establishment? Call it army or military?
You can. It doesn't
Okay.
matter.
Okay.
Basically, establishment in every country is comprising of 2-3 components, which
Okay.
is military, which is intelligence agencies, which
Right.
is judiciary.
Okay.
So it's a combination.
You realize that in most of the dictionaries, establishment is defined as the forces that hold the status quo. So that doesn't essentially have to mean any of those.
I think the political definition is, of course, the standing.
Are you getting a political dictionary?
Not exactly.
I'm going to talk about this, and Naseem Siddiqui Sahab, I'm going to come to you in a bit. Allow me to first bring in Engineer Khurram Dastagir Khan Sahab. Engineer Khurram Dastagir Khan Sahab, had there been one narrative, it would have been easier for the media to understand what exactly the PDM is thinking. But we see more than one statement, and the positions where it visibly seems that your party or PDM might have taken, U-turns. One example is the elections of Senate. Now it seems that your party is also on board regarding the Senate elections. The second thing is that the deadline that you keep on giving to the government, it keeps on extending. Now it stands at 31st of January. What exactly is driving these U-turns, sir?
What is doing PDM is the ultimate goal of holding in Pakistan general elections that are free, transparently fair, and free from extra constitutional interference, just as we saw in the 2018 election. That is the ultimate aim. Everything else is a strategy or a milestone towards that destination. So it includes whether in the first phase, we did a series of very large rallies across the country, which in the first instance buried the Prime Minister's narrative that these opposition parties do not have any public support. We demonstrated their public support in all 4 provinces, in more than one province, in different places in a single province. So that narrative is now comprehensively buried.
There seems to be some audio connection problem. Khurram Sahab, can you hear us? Right. So there seems to be some connectivity problem. We are going to fix.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it?
Yeah. Okay. Right. Let me bring in Naseem Siddiqui Sahab. Naseem Siddiqui Sahab, at this moment there seems to be many games which are being played on the chessboard. And it seems so that it is the game of Go, not even chess. What do you think is going to happen in coming days?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much for inviting. I'm saying that PDM, when they started their rallies, there was a tempo. But at the moment we can see that they have differences among themselves in the PDM and in the Maulana party as well. So their narrative is not been shown in the public.
That is
JUIF, in which you can see he has taken some people off from his party.
Yeah.
So he has got some
internal problems. Wing seems to be rebelling.
And the main thing, Farrukh, that their narrative was for the resignations, which was they were saying from the very first day, and now they have taken a U-turn. So what they are going to tell the public? Public has seen that they have not a good narrative at the moment, for which they have started all these agitations, or you can say these rallies, and they are...
Why do you think they need to answer to anybody? Because apparently, and it has been a consensus point, U-turns are not bad.
No, but they were saying that they are out for the people of Pakistan. But people have seen that they are fighting for their own benefits. Some parties they want NRO, some parties they are out of the parliament at the moment. Maulana is out of the parliament for a long time, which he never been. So they just want their own benefits. They are not going to give anything to the public. That's why you have seen that in the rallies and jalsas, only I can see, I've been witness for the Lahore jalsa, and I've seen many big processions over there. So only the workers were there. The normal public, they are not coming out because they are not able to sell their narrative. They could have gone for the like inflation or things like corruption, but they are just attacking the Prime Minister Imran Khan at the moment.
When you said they could have gone for inflation, I thought that you are going to say that their brother went for deflation. Somehow the PDM might be shrinking. But let me come back to Ahmed Jawad Sahab. Ahmed Jawad Sahab, you must have listened to Engineer Khurram Dastagir Khan. His point is very simple. Holding of fair and free elections. Is it something where you can actually build consensus, and shouldn't your government and your party be reaching out to the opposition?
Farrukh, the question which comes to my mind is that how 2018 elections are different than 2013, and how 2013 elections are different than 2008 elections.
You don't want to compare both with 2008 because Mohtarma bin Nazir Bhutto was assassinated.
I mean, after every election, the party which has lost obviously have the complaints, and
including yours.
Of course, we also. But our way of addressing the problem was that we addressed the constitutional institutions. For that, we tried in Parliament, we tried in Election Commission, we tried in High Courts, we tried in Supreme Court. So I think every possible forum which was available for such grievances, we went to that. And the difference between the complaints or the objections of the PDM is that they have not attempted any of such institutions. And their allegations and their blame on the fairness of the election is just for the sake of talk. Whether it is talk,
I understand that. But regardless of that, if they are threatening to agitate, and you are the government, shouldn't you be reaching out?
Farrukh, the problem is you just mentioned backdoor channels. Now, allow me to use the term backdoor agenda. What is something which is actually the agenda? They present an agenda that we want free and fair election. But actually their agenda is that some kind of resolution, some kind of NRO for the top leadership of the two major political parties. And that is the starting point of PDM objective, and it is the end point for PTI government. That we don't want to discuss anything related to this. Yes, anything else, most welcome.
Khurram Dastagir Khan Sahab, earlier you were making a point, and I think that you had not concluded. There was some problem with the audio. If you want to first actually go back to that point, then I can ask you a question.
Audible. That's of the issue. The issue is that at the moment, inflation is rampant, economy is imploding, Parliament is locked. We have not had a session of the National Assembly for the last 2.5 months. Governance is paralyzed, and life of an ordinary Pakistani is poor and hungry.
There once again seems to be some problem with the audio. Engineer Sahab, if you can, sir.
Can you hear me now? Is it
yeah. Now
audible?
I can hear you, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Okay. The issue, of course, is that PDM is not only addressing these public issues and failure of governance of this government, they are also trying to address the core issue of how Pakistan is going to be run. I mean, of the 73 years that Pakistan has existed, 38 years at least were of direct authoritarian dictatorship rule. So you cannot deny that the armed forces have had a very strong hand in running this country for more than half of its existence.
Right. Engineer Sahab, but you are talking about in total 4 journals that actually took over government, and they had a military government. I understand that you have a concern over there, even though there are journals with whom your party also cooperated very happily. Sir, but my question is regarding fair and free elections.
Let me touch that point.
Hang on, and let me ask a question as well, right? Earlier you were saying that it is your major concern is to hold free and fair elections. And let me take you back to 2014, when your party was saying that if you want to address the issues regarding elections, come to the standing committees or special committees of the parliament. You still are a part of the parliament, sir. Why can't you take these concerns over there?
Because the parliament is locked for the last 2.5 months. We have not had a session. The role of the speaker in running parliament has been very controversial, very one-sided, very bulldozing, and that's the reason that nothing of consequence gets done in parliament, because government is insisting on reducing parliament to a place where only abuses are exchanged between treasury benches and opposition benches. So the government's lack of interest in parliament and the fact that the government is overall failing on every other front, on the economic front, on the foreign policy front, on the governance front, on the front of relations between centre and provinces, the issue of how the country is going to be run in the next few years, the government's failure to provide for COVID vaccine, the government's failure to provide for gas in time, the government's failure in managing the energy sector, all these issues are making the government fugitive from parliament. They don't want to face
but with due respect, we heard from the government that the Speaker National Assembly was asked to reach out to the opposition parties, particularly on the issue of the agenda, and it is in the interest of the government also to pass these laws or reform the system. So they are bound to contact you. And let me bring in Barrister Hassan Ali Mirza, who joins us on telephone. I introduced him earlier as well. He is a senior leader of GDA, the Government Allied Group of Parties. Barrister Sahab, thank you very much for being part of the program. Now let me ask you the position in which PDM is at the center. It seems that your party or your alliance is in the same position in Sindh. Can you relate to the PDM's agenda, sir?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you so much, Farrukh. I fail to understand exactly how your question is posed. What the PDM is asking or is stating is that, because we failed to win the election, we want to get rid of it altogether. The populist to public agenda that we see them piggybacking on from issue to issue. Most recently, we saw the tragic incident that happened in Mach with 11 coal miners that were assassinated. The PDM leadership showed up there and again tried to piggyback on that issue. The nation does not suffer from amnesia. We remember how many times our minority communities, especially the Hazara community, suffered during the governance of these same parties. How many tragedies happened during the rule of the Nawaz government? How many tragedies happened during the People's Party tenure? And that community still continues to suffer. So, but the point over here is that the PDM leadership today suffers from a death of public confidence. And it's very evident that they have to then piggyback on these other genuine public issues.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but the reason, at the start you actually questioned the structure of the question. Let me actually qualify. At this moment, it seems that, of course, the opposition parties keep on agitating against the governments, but there seems to be a need for consensus on people's welfare. Is it true that it is time for all political parties to sit together? And will GDA also be actually supporting something of this, the idea of that sort, sir?
You see, we support the supremacy of the Constitution of Pakistan. We support the continuity of democracy in Pakistan. Now, everything that falls within that ambit is a welcome development. But if someone is asking for concessions outside of the ambit of the law, or outside of the ambit of the Constitution, then that is something that GDA will definitely not acquiesce to. Be it like I heard your guests talk about back channel dialogue or back agendas and so on and so forth. I believe that none of that is in the better interest of Pakistan and the longevity of democracy in this country. If we talk about extra constitutional intervention that has happened over the last 70 years, and we are genuine in the effort of closing that door once and for all, then we must revert to the rule of law, to the rule of the supremacy of the Constitution of Pakistan. And all the institutions must operate within the ambit that is allowed to them within the Constitution, and so must all the political parties. I've heard from the PDM stage demands that the elected government resign itself, and we would rather talk to the generals, again undermining their own so-called democratic credentials. We must now turn this page once and for all, and we must walk the same that we talk.
Mirza Sahab, with every answer that is Sahab, you keep on helping me by giving me more questions.
Thank you.
And there are two aspects which are very important. You just pointed out the sad event which witnessed killing of 11 coal miners, right? That means that there is need for a common agenda in the country. And then, of course, your adjacent party, PMLF, keeps on sending its emissaries to meet other people. So I was actually hoping that you're going to tell us that GDA stands for some kind of common minimum agenda.
There must be a common minimum agenda. There must be dialogue between political parties. This is a democratic dispensation after all. The right forum for democratic discussion and debate should be the parliament. And I heard the engineer Saab just now talking about the parliament not being summoned in the last 2.5 months. I'm not sure, but has the opposition requisitioned a session of the parliament? If not, then that should be done forthwith. And the all national agenda items should be discussed there. The problem we see over here, Farrukh, is that what we hear publicly and what we see happening privately are two totally dichotomous scenarios.
And of course you are referring to the idea that on the front the opposition keeps on talking about actually bringing the government down in the interest of democracy and behind the scene they keep on asking for an
Will that address all of Pakistan's problems? If the government is somehow brought down today, will that address Pakistan's problems?
I totally get that point, sir. If you can stay with us, let me bring in Naseem Siddiqui sir. Sir, there seems to be a desire to actually work out the differences. I mean, like Mirza Saab, or for that matter, Ahmed Jawad Saab, one has to actually dig deep to reach that desire, but you do actually strike gold once you reach there. And similarly, when we were talking to Engineer Khurram Dastagir Khan Saab, there too, one sees that there is a need for some kind of consensus building. What is keeping all parties from doing that?
Definitely, the consensus is the need of the hour. But what the opposition is doing at the moment for that thing, to whom they are asking that let the Imran Khan government go and let us come in. If the elections comes, we can go for the new elections. If they lose it, then again they will be saying that it's rigging, and if they won, then they will say that the elections were right. But why don't they go to the parliament?
That's a very good point. But if you want to, develop or strengthen democracy, you cannot actually go to the forces which are not elected and say
you are blaming the same forces.
To power.
And you are blaming the same forces, and you are asking another from those forces as well, the right parties, that if they want consensus, they should have called for the National Assembly Ijlas, and they should go for no confidence vote over there. That's the legal way. If they want to get rid of Prime Minister Imran Khan, they should go legally into the parliament, but they are not doing anything in the parliament.
Ahmed Jawad Sahab, how recently did the government have an interaction with the opposition parties? Considering we are talking about a very hung parliament, and in that hung parliament you need, if you want to bring in constitutional amendments, you need two-third majority.
Farrukh, it's not the hung parliament. How do you say that?
Well, but razor's edge actually, by which you are actually standing or staying in power.
No, I mean, due to Corona, there have been interruptions in closing down the parliament. There were a number of cases in parliament, and yes, it's happening all over the world. So I think for that safety point of view, for some time it is closed. Otherwise, parliament in last 1 year, I mean, there have been sessions and.
No, by hung parliament, I didn't mean that it is suspended. I mean that the majority number is very small. The margin of majority.
It doesn't matter. The democracy defines very clearly the majority takes the government. Now, whether the majority is a big majority or a small majority, I mean,
no,
I am the right.
My concern is about operational details, right? If you want to bring about or implement your agenda of reform, you will need to not only amend the amendments, but even the constitution. And to do that, you need two-third majority, which you clearly don't have.
Farrukh, yes, definitely, I agree that policy making and new bills about the welfare of the people, I mean, there is always a need, and which is what is the basic role of parliament. But on the other hand, I think there is enough in the plate of government which they can, with the existing rules, with the existing laws, they can bring those reforms. I mean, it is the implementation of the law. It is, and that's what exactly is the government doing. If you look at the economic activities, I mean, it does not require a resolution. It does not require a policy from the parliament. I mean, the policy about the energy, policy about law, policy about making new dams, policy about energy, I mean everything, how to control inflation, how to increase economic activities. I mean, this is the role of the government, in which they can do it without...
but how to actually amend the laws to ensure that you can hold a local body elections that take care of many of the local problems. And that might need cooperation from the opposition as well.
I think the local body elections can be held even without any new policy or any amendment. It is just matter of, I think, this Corona situation.
You want local bodies only in 2 provinces or 3?
No, all provinces.
So how do you actually conduct that in Sindh? You'll have to talk to People's Party.
Of course, People's Party has to participate whenever
No, but
hold
we
that
understand that they have different, understanding of what kind of laws there should be.
But at least we can hold it in 2 provinces very conveniently.
Yeah, but we still are waiting for that also. Khurram Dastagir Khan Sahab, once again, let me ask you one very direct question. Repeatedly it is said that your parties or PDM's, concerns about democracy, inflation, hyperinflation, employment, and other concerns are actually an afterthought. And what these political parties actually seek is concessions, legal concessions for the leadership of your party. Mia Nawaz Sharif, the Sharif family, Zabari family, Bilawal Bhutto Zabari's family, and Maulana Fazlur Rahman's family. What do you have to say on that, sir?
It's a lie. It's a hollow claim. Because government, ministers in parliament have claimed this so many times, and when challenged to name any one person who went to seek concessions, they have withdrawn. PDM as a whole and its constituent parties are not seeking any concession from any institution or government, nor are we going to even discuss any such law or concessions. This is our clear stance. So all this game about NRO, the Prime Minister goes to Quetta to condole with the victims and their families of the Mach massacre, and all he has to say is कि मैं NRO नहीं दूंगा. So it's just a Prime Minister's ridiculous.
But with due respect, that is a constant refrain of the government, right? It is something that is repeated elsewhere as well. Let me ask you very clearly, because the government says that when it came to lawmaking regarding FATF, at that time your parties were consulted, and at that time the parties were demanding that there should be 34 amendments to the NAB law, which would have actually deemed it totally toothless. So is it not exactly what NRO is about, sir?
No, because at that time the government didn't consult the opposition. It was made to do so by the military establishment. And I am direct witness to 4 instances in which the Prime Minister simply abdicated his responsibility to talk to the opposition and outsourced the responsibility to the military authorities. First was at the Balakot attack, when India attacked Balakot, the Prime Minister abdicated. When India took over Kashmir, the Prime Minister abdicated. When there was a issue of FAT, Prime Minister
we can actually go in circles, and I understand what you are saying. But with due respect, my question was not about the army. Army functions in aid of civil power, so it can be called into service whenever needed. But the question is about the 34 amendments that were demanded in the NAB law.
If you will allow me, I need a couple of minutes on this. So the military establishment put the government and opposition on the table, and not on our insistence, but our interlocutors' assistance, the NAB law was put on the table, and suggestions were invited. One party, PDM constituent party, PDM didn't exist then, put a number of suggestions on the table. But your audience needs to know, the government has not put any NAB law in Parliament, and the opposition has not put any amendments, the famous 34. They do not exist in Parliament as amendments. So it was just a discussion point, and the government has gone to the public saying they need an NRO. I repeat, whatever happened in July, it no longer exists. We are neither seeking nor shall we discuss any concessions with any government nor with any other institution. That would be very clear. But the question is that the government is in fact a proxy, and the fact that it is repeatedly fugitive from its responsibility, and it's a government that comes away from its responsibility again and again, whether it be regarding the COVID vaccine, whether it be regarding provision of gas, whether it be the very fundamental task of saving the lives of Pakistani citizens, whether it be in Hazara or in Makran or in Gwadar.
this government runs away. And this is the reason that we have not had a parliament session in 2.5 months, because this government is incapable of facing the elected representatives and their accountability. So yes, you can...
You asked me that there should be more than 2 minutes given to this answer, and we have actually outlasted that. Let me actually bring in Ahmed Jawad Sahab also. But the concern, with due respect, is that these are concerns or questions or arguments which are always made by every opposition party in the country, and this has been a part of culture. But regarding this NRO business and the 34 amendments demanded in the NAB, and it is a claim, a big one. You have heard the answer. What is your rebuttal of that statement, Ahmed Jawad Sahab?
Farrukh, I will also would like to answer many other things which engineers have mentioned. For example, PTI running away from its objectives, or
outsourcing its business to the armed forces.
So let me just highlight a few things that PTI did not run away right from the beginning from any challenge, whether it was a challenge created by India, annexation of Kashmir. PTI was not deterred with that. PTI was not deterred with the Corona challenge. PTI has not been deterred by the economic challenges it faced right from the beginning. The economic indicators are in front of you, how PTI government has overcome all those current account deficit, and how they have increased the foreign reserves, and how they have increased the remittance, and how they have stabilized the stock exchange, how they have created economic activity in Faisalabad and Sialkot, how they have created economic activity in the construction sector, how they have reached to the highest level of exports in last 10 years. All these things does not indicate that the PTI government has run away from any challenge. And if anybody has run away from the objectives or from the milestone, it is the PDM who said "Aar ya Paar." This is the statement of the top leadership of PMLN, and their resignations were on the way, and now they do not know when they have to resign. There is no consensus among the PDM parties. They don't know when they have to do the long march. They are preparing for the by-elections. They are preparing for the Senate election. So that means they have nothing, and they just pick up the issues. Even this issue in Balochistan, they try to even cash on that. This is the frustration which is shown by the PDM leadership. Now they try to pick things, small little issues. If there was a electricity breakdown for a few hours, so it was also given a twist.
What exactly happened? You are saying that these concerns are weaponized rather than actually fixed. And regarding accountability, very quickly, if you want to talk about that.
Farrukh, these are on record, what was proposed by the opposition parties and what was rejected by the government. There is no discussion on that. It is on the record. And PTI government will not compromise on the accountability. This is the agenda, this is the promise of Prime Minister Imran Khan and PTI government. So there will be no discussion on that, and public knows that what is the real issue. It is not the public issue, it is the NRO which is the issue of PTI.
Absolutely. Barrister Saab is still with us. I am grateful that he is. Barrister Saab, you have listened to both sides of the argument. And let me ask you, why does it seem that political parties would rather talk at each other than to talk to each other?
Thank you, Farrukh. There is a dearth of democratic credentials in our whole system, and I do agree with Engineer Saab that a session of the Parliament should be summoned as soon as it is viable to do so, and all the political parties should sit down and play their roles effectively. The parties that are in government, the role of governance, and the parties that are in opposition, to highlight wherever the shortcomings arise. Now, it's very clear to see we can raise a number of objections. What PTI had promised in its election manifesto or pre-election promises, maybe they're not on track in achieving them halfway through the term. Why does the opposition not play its role as the opposition and highlight those shortcomings and prefer some advice on how to achieve those targets, if at all they have that advice, rather than painting this doomsday scenario, aar ya par, for example, as was just discussed now, and burning down the whole house, the whole system, winding up the system, these dharnas and long marches. What shocks me is the parties that claim to be the product of a democratic system. Why are they so hell-bent on uprooting the very same system they rely upon today? Why not become a productive part of it? Opposition is just as important a partner in the business of democratic governance as the parties that are on the treasury side.
Right. And barristers have very quickly, given that you are talking about the need to strengthen the system, and you are also the parliamentary leader of GDA in Sindh Assembly. Let me ask you, are you going to work with the People's Party's government in the same spirit?
We have done so in the past as well. Whenever there has been an issue of genuine public import raised, then the GDA has always stood with that issue, regardless of who has authored that motion in the Assembly, be it People's Party or be it one of our co-opposition parties. We've done it on a number of issues. Most recently, for example, the issue with the islands over here in Sindh was a highly emotive issue, and GDA, although we are a partner with the federal government up top, but we believe that this is contrary to the emotions and sentiment and the interest of Sindh, and we supported Pakistan People's Party's position on the floor of the Sindh Assembly. That is the politics that we adhere to, and that is the politics we
that actually
much larger parties can also adhere to.
Right, and Barrister sir, that actually qualifies a very important point, that of all the people, your party is rightly positioned and your alliance is correctly positioned to actually highlight the need for national consensus. When you can do it, the entire nation can do it, right? This is the point that we have to keep on highlighting. On that note, let me thank Barrister Hasnan Ali Mirza. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Very quickly, I'm going to come to you, Naseem Siddiqui sir, but Khurram sahab very quickly wants to come in. Please, sir, do.
The thing is, when the opposition leaders in the National Assembly and the Punjab Assembly are in jail for crimes not committed, for crime of dissenting from government, and the government expects that they can have a smooth sailing, that's not going to happen. Because if this consistent victimization and consistent defamation, which we have done with dozens of opposition leaders, without any result in court, and all of them are now out on bail because the government was unable to produce any evidence, even a shred of evidence in court. So that speaks to this government's attitude and the fact that now we have 17 consecutive months of food inflation in double digits, Pitafi Sahab. The people of Pakistan are hungry, their children are hungry because they cannot afford, first of all, wheat, then sugar. Now, just this past 2 weeks, we've had
in the case of the due respect, I'm sure that you are looking at the indicators. The number, food inflation actually is coming down right now. The sensitive price index has come down recently, and I agree with you that there is need
of 17 consecutive months of double-digit food inflation, and my numbers are clear, and they are government's numbers, they are not my numbers.
Yeah, I was actually quoting the government's portal as well, but Naseem Siddiqui Sahab, I'm told that we are actually drawing to the close. Very quickly, if you want to conclude your part.
We have seen that economics things are getting better at the moment. The indicators you can see in the stock exchange as well. So whereas we were talking about the national consensus, I think that's the need of the time, and government and opposition should sit down for the betterment of Pakistan.
Right. Again, let me also ask you, Ahmed Jawad Sahab, for your conclusion, but let me actually add a little bit of an inquiry in there. And that is that this animus between the ruling parties and the